Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, I'm trying to start a little series of videos about developing my home theater over the next few months, probably, as I move into a new home. I'll finally have some room and space to play with and kind of build, the ideal or my ideal theater or close to it in the coming months. So, I've been inspired by several folks I've found on the web. So shout out to some key folks that I'm already described to. Shout out to Youth Man. Shout out to That Home Theater Dude, and shout out to K-Space Guy. And these are just some three folks that I've been researching and on my journey trying to find out as much as I can and doing searches. And they're just regular folks, not like editorial and business folks, but they're just regular folks that were in the home theater buying products and talking about it to people. So they were really helpful. So I'll leave some links in my description section here to their pages. I don't know them personally, but they still inspired me and helped me out a lot. So appreciate it, guys. So what I want to talk about today has to do with these guys. If you can see them, I'll bring them up a little bit. So I got these in actually a few weeks ago. They're still boxed up because I'm not in the house yet. This is a temporary apartment. Yes, SVS SB16 Ultras, and there's two of them. And really excited to be able to open these guys up and play with them eventually. It still might be some time before I can really get to it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey and kind of what went into my decision, because I spent months thinking about it, pondering about it, researching subwoofers and what I wanted to do, what I wanted to get. And I discovered a lot of things, and I just kind of wanted to share some of my insight because I know a lot of people are probably going through a lot of the same thing. So for me, you see, I made a decision here. I went with SVS as a brand. I went with sealed versus ported, and I went with duals. And I want to talk about, what went into that decision for me. So first with SVS, I started with SVS. I had Polk audio systems like my first system, but this will be technically my third and fourth SVS subs. So I had SVS started with the PB12 NSD, which was their old entry-level ported sub. And it was a revelation. I mean, at the time, it was in a really large basement, kind of daylight basement. And that was the first time that I felt like pants flapping bass. Like literally my pants were flapping from a good distance too. And I just didn't know that that was even possible. So I was like, okay, that was entry level. It was like $4.99. So I'm like, okay, these guys are for real. And then from there, my most recent sub was the SB13 Ultra, the sealed. So I went from ported to sealed, so I'll talk about that a little bit. But it was a great sub. I just that the room that I had it in was less than ideal. Really, it was an open living room, open to the kitchen. It had some carpet, some hardwood. It was just a very had a long hallway. It had a screen door. It had a fireplace. It was a lot of different materials playing around. And my seating area in particular was in one of the nulls. The nulls from the subwoofer. So if you know about standing waves and room nodes, my seating area was in a really big null. So I didn't hear a lot of the bass, honestly, from where I mainly sat. Just kind of walking around the room, I heard different amounts of it. But overall, I mean, it was a good performer. It did take me some time to get used to the sealed sound versus the ported sound. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. But yeah, and now here I am with these. So I was somewhat familiar with SVS already. The biggest issue that I struggled with was thinking about ported versus sealed. And that's a really big thing. There really isn't a right answer, okay? So let me just say that off, right? There's no right or wrong answer here, but there are things to just be aware of. And then I'll explain why, one was preferred for me. So let's start with ported. Ported subs in general, apples to apples, same spec, same manufacturer, same components as a sealed counterpart. Ported subs are going to be larger in size for sure, physically larger even than these. These are pretty big boxes, but the ported version of these, the PB16, are monsters. I mean, they are literally 50% larger than these, if you can believe that. So they're going to be physically larger. They're going to dig deeper, so they're going to basically have much higher output at the ultra low frequencies, usually like below 31 hertz, 31, 25, 20 and under. They're going to up until the tuning frequency of the port. So most ported subs might have a tuning frequency of at 20 hertz, which is technically the lowest that human ears can hear. And at that point, below that, they'll drop off fast, so you wouldn't really get that much output. Some of them can be tuned lower though, so you will get more deeper output. But in general, at those 20, 25, 31 hertz, 16 hertz and stuff range, a ported sub is going to really have a lot more output than a sealed sub. So you're going to get that scary bass that people talk about, that house foundation shaking bass. You're going to get all of that with the sealed sub. I'm sorry, with the ported sub. So there's that to consider. And generally speaking, ported subs, again, apples to apples, because they're larger, there's just physically bigger, more material, they're usually going to be a little bit more expensive as well. So the advantages are just, much more output at the ultra low frequencies. At the mid and upper bass frequencies, sealed subs are going to be pretty much on par, if not even a little bit better, and even in terms of output. So most of the advantage for the ported is just in those ultra low frequencies. Now with a sealed sub, it's kind of the opposite, right? Usually apples to apples, they're going to be in a lot more smaller box, which is generally speaking a lot more aesthetically pleasing and easier to fit, right, in most rooms. And then, like I said, mid to upper bass, they're going to still be really powerful, really high. And ultra low bass, they're going to be less than a ported for sure. So that's something to think about. Now, the other thing about that is, typically speaking, with those considerations in place, sealed subs are generally considered to be better, more accurate, more tighter bass, which is better for music because they integrate more seamlessly with music. Because ideally with music, you don't want to know where the subwoofer is. You don't even want to really hear the subwoofer. You just want to hear one solid piece of sound with the bass being there when it needs to be. And sealed subwoofers do a better job of integrating and of giving you that tight, articulate bass that sounds much more like a live presentation of music. Ported subs are generally speaking better for home theater, for movies, when you want to get that visceral, dynamic, really deep, really scary type of bass sound, which is counterintuitive for music in a lot of ways, because again, that's going to draw attention to itself. But for movies, generally speaking, ported subs are more preferred. So if you're someone that's looking for a home theater setup with a system that is devoted for movies only, or very, very, high ratio for movies, you would want to definitely go with a ported sub and go with the size that you can fit. The PB16 again are monsters, but they have smaller ported subs that would do great in most regular homes, living rooms, media rooms, whatever. If you have a system that's meant to be more musical and music focused, and you're like more of an audiophile, then you probably want to go with sealed, because they're going to give you the more accurate bass in general. Now, if you think about it, a lot of the high-end audiophile boutique speaker companies like Focal and Martin Logan and Paradigm even, they make subwoofers, but they never make ported subwoofers. I don't know. Look, you could check out their websites, check out into them. You never see them making a ported sub because they're focusing on music. They're making speakers that are going to excel at music, and as they make a subwoofer, again, sealed is going to be much preferred for music accuracy. So, as you start, especially if you start kind of getting up the ladder and getting more like audiophile grade, level of with your system, sealed is the way to go. So with all of that said, why did I choose sealed? Well, I went back and forth on this. My goal with this particular time, with my system, was to build the ultimate, Endgame bass setup for me. Again, within reason for what I could afford, of course. But the idea was to get a system where I would not ever have to say, I need to upgrade. There's some place further for me to go. The SB16s and the PB16s are world-class subwoofers. If you haven't heard about them, the PB16 got rated, I think, subwoofer of the year last year. SVS's SB4000, which is the one beneath this one, got rated for the subwoofer of the year this year. The SB13 in the past was rated subwoofer of the year. I mean, SVS makes great products, and this is their flagship sealed subwoofer. So their flagship stuff is pretty much world class. They're designed to be able to compete with subs out there, any sub out there, generally speaking, you know, for 2 to 3 times the price. So, you know, and I knew that, you know, so it's like going up to their highest end thing, you know, level with their products was a good thing to do. Going sealed versus ported for me just came down to the fact that my system is going to be multi-purpose. Music is going to be an important part of my system. And I'm going to watch a lot of movies, but then I'm also going to play video games, and I'm going to watch TV, and again, I'm going to play music. So thinking about something that's multi-purpose was a consideration. And, you know, again, for music, and I do plan on getting like a really high-end musical setup as part of my system, you know, sealed definitely the way to go. I've had the SB13, so that sealed sound is different, but it was adequate for the most part. There were times where I can tell the ultra low was not quite where I wanted it to be, so I wanted to have more ultra low bass. So going from the SB13 seals to an SB16 seal in and of itself is going to be an upgrade at those ultra low bass frequencies. We're talking like almost double the ultra low frequency, just going from a 13 to a 16. So that's a plus. But then I have duals. So going duals also will give me a little bit more output and a little bit more headroom. So I will be able to get deeper bass, not as deep as supported, but I think it'll be plenty deep, you know, for anything that I can imagine sitting there with 2 of these, you know, 16-inch, you know, 5,000 watt each peak power subwoofers and being like, yeah, I need more. I've heard people say that. You know, there's some people that said that. Youthman, if he ever catches this video, he's someone that tried the 16s and didn't like it, but his system was a dedicated theater room, and he's coming from a system that had 4 15-inch seal subs. And as a dedicated theater room, yeah, you know, it didn't have that visceral slam that he was looking for. And so he went with the PBs. But that makes sense. You know, but again, for a multi-purpose system and for someone who, I love bass, but I'm not like crazy with bass. I want it to be there when it needs to be there, but not like overly crazy with it. I really think this would be fine. So this is a big, powerful seal sub. And that's, you know, those big, powerful seal subs can give you an uncompromised experience, especially if you go dual like I did. So I think it should be fine. I'm looking forward to really hearing that sound. But coming from a single SB13, I'm thinking it would be fine. So multi-purpose for me, aesthetics was a big deal for me. The PB16, quite frankly, and even in my new homeroom, is just too big. It's just not going to fit. They're monstrous. And again, I wanted to go duals, and I'm going to talk about that right in a second, but I definitely wanted to go duals this time. And yeah, getting 2 of those is a little bit more expensive, and they're just huge. So that was honestly the biggest consideration. And the other thing is that ported sub have the tendency to do what's called chuffing at the port. It's an issue where you hear this really obnoxious noise as the driver is going. It sounds really, really distorted. It sounds like the driver is almost broken. That actually happened to my PB12 NSD, which is why I went to the SB13. And I read about that, and it's something that, you know, it can happen. It can happen with any, you know, ported sub in theory. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but it can happen. And when it does, there's really not much, you know, you can do with it except for replace it. And it's just, it was obnoxious. I just didn't really want to have to deal with that again. With sealed subs, you don't have that problem because there's no ports. So I've read about people complaining about that happening with their PB16s as well. And I was just like, yeah, you know, I don't want to have to deal with that. So aesthetic was the biggest thing, you know, and then multi-purpose. I wanted to be able to have something that really would integrate well with music. The PB16 it has a sealed mode as well, but, you know, I love the look of the sealed subwoofer, the SVS sealed subwoofers aesthetically. I just think they look nice. They're not too big. They're not, you know, but they look like something, you know. So good compromise for me. Duals. The biggest issue that, you know, I have personally had over my years of dealing with home theater, listening to subwoofers, no matter what kind of subwoofer you have, sealed, ported, $10,000 sub or not, you're going to have to deal with those standing waves that I mentioned earlier in the room. For those that don't know really quickly, the idea is that when you place a subwoofer in the room, those bass waves, as large as they are, they don't kind of get distributed uniformly throughout the room. So you can be in one spot in a room and you'll hear, you know, a certain amount of bass, and you can literally take a step away, and it may sound different. You might hear more or less bass depending on, you know, the room. That's something that's universal. Every room has the issue. There's no automatic EQ that can really deal with that. It's just it's something you have to deal with. That is the single most annoying and just kind of problematic aspect of subwoofers to me to deal with. No matter, and I've had a $200 subwoofer, you know, once upon a time, and, you know, now to, you know, something that's world class that costs thousands of dollars, right? And it's like, I still heard that. I've heard these in a store, and I did that and walked around the room, and I was like, wow. I mean, it went from zero bass to, you know, overpowering bass. So you want to ideally have an even distribution of bass. You want to be able to sit wherever you have in your couch or your living room or your whatever, and you want to be able to sit, and everyone that's sitting around can hear the same amount of bass. And that's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to do with a single sub. So the idea is that dual subs, you know, when you place one sub in one side and one sub in the other side, the idea is that the nulls of the one sub is going to be filled by the other sub that's on the opposite side of it, or somewhere else in the room. And there's, you know, different studies and different things about placement for those two subs, but in general, you can basically fill in the room better with multiple subs, and that is really important. It's not about having two subs or bragging rights or having double the output. That's not how it works at all. You do get a little bit more output, but it's nowhere near double. But it's about getting that even distribution, walking around the space, sitting around your whole seating area, and being able to hear a nice even wall of bass. So that's what I'm really, really looking forward to, because I've had that issue. It drove me crazy with my previous sub and my previous setup. So even in this kind of basement media area that I'm gonna have this stuff in, it's a nice sized room, a single sub. It's not that it's not powerful enough to fill it in. I'm sure this thing is a beast, but I want to be able to have that nice even distribution of bass and not have to worry about having spots that are missing and stuff like that. So that's the benefit of duals. And that's why, you know, I was really adamant about going duals. And PBs, again, a little bit more money. You know, I was able to get these for a great deal. Basically, I got buy one, get one 50% off is ultimately what happened. And, you know, that was brand new in the box that you see. So too good to pass up. So I think I would be good with that, you know. So that's the whole ported versus sealed. SVS, you know, being a company that they are. I will point out that there was a couple of other, just looking at like the full gamut of subs and companies out there, there's a couple other companies to think about that I felt were pretty competitive with SVS in different ways. The first is JL Audio, of course. They make absolutely world-class subs. They arguably make better articulate musical subs than SVS does. They only make sealed subs, at least in their home theater segment, but they also make car subwoofers as well. World class. The problem is that they're really expensive. The JL F113, their Fathom, which is their highest in line, it's the 13-inch driver, so it's actually more equivalent to the SB13, right, or now the SB4000. It has a little bit more power. The amplifier does, RMS apparently. It has an auto EQ feature built in. You know, it's bigger. It's even heavier than the SVS sub. I think the Fathom 113 is like over 130 pounds or something. It's crazy. Super well engineered. Super huge rubber and around the driver. Those subs are great. 13 inches. You're talking almost $5,000. Those subs are over $4,000, right? Approaching $5,000 for one. So regardless of trying to get two and getting the benefit of duals, it's just not feasible. And that's really the issue with JL. They're really boutique, which is why you don't see a whole lot of reviews out there on them. You don't see a lot of companies even getting them in, checking them out. And they're only really sold at really high-end boutique shops. Great subs. If you have the money, can afford it, absolutely go for it. And they do have cheaper ones, but once you get down to like the E line and then their D line, for the money as value, I think SVS beats them. The E lines are kind of closer to the price of what the Ultras are, but the Ultras again are more competitive with the Fathoms, you know. So it's just for dollar. I mean, SVS is literally almost half the price. I literally got two of these subs right here, right now, for 16-inch drivers for less of the price of one Fathom for JL. So that's the issue there. The other issue, the other company I think about is Hue or HSU, Sue Research. They're an internet direct company like SVS. and they make some really quality subs. I mean, they, you know, for everything I've seen, I never heard one in person, but I've seen them over the years. Their reviews for all of their products, that they make quality subs for cheap because they're internet direct, so they can bypass a lot of the, you know, middlemen, or they can, you know, the middlemen that's involved, so they go straight to the consumer. So they have a sealed sub that's called the ULS version 2 or Mark 2, I think, is the latest one. Great sub, 15-inch sub, sealed. Nice design. It's even cheaper than the SB16, honestly. I forget exactly what the price is, but I want to say it's like $1,500, something like that, or somewhere around there, $1,200, $1,300, somewhere around there. So it's cheaper than the SB16's MSRP. In terms of performance and output, it's comparable. I mean, the SB16 may edge it out in the lower frequencies, and the mid to upper frequencies, you know, the SU might actually beat it a little bit, or at least be on par with it. So it's competitive, but again, a little bit less money. My issue with them is just that, you know, A, aesthetically, I still like the SVS SBs better. B, you know, they're a little bit too niche. You know, like SVS at this point is just so well entrenched in the industry. You can find them at all kinds of stores, all kinds of places. Their support is great. You know, you can get tons of information about them because they're so widely distributed, and they have so many sales. They're really popular. So there's a lot of information you can get out there on them. Not hard to find at all. You know, the SU are just really niche subs. You know, I've never heard anyone in person talk about them. I know about them because I follow this stuff, but yeah, they're just really niche. I just wanted something that had a little bit more support. You know, something that is more supported, I guess, something that I can find out more information about when I was doing research. You have to really, really dig to get into the SU stuff, and it's just harder to find. But they're from what I've heard, great quality subs. If budget is an issue and you're just looking for a nice performance, great way to go. And then finally, I would say Rhythmic Audio, another internet company. They specialize in subwoofers. They make a wider range of subs than even SU does. They have ported, they have sealed. They range from, like, I know they go up to 18 inches. They have dual cabinets with the new G25. Super, super good quality. Everyone I've heard talks about Rhythmic performance-wise. They even talk about it being even more musical, more articulate, and even higher output than anything SVS can put out. And they're also pretty well favorably priced, or, you know, competitively priced for similar things. So my issue with them, again, is what I said about SU, is just that they're, again, very, very niche. Internet only, but it's really hard. Like, I tried. It's really hard to get a lot of information, to see a lot of reviews on rhythmic subwoofers, to really see what people are out there are thinking about it. The people that do have them, a little bit I have heard, they say they love them. They say they're great, but not a lot. It's just harder to get information. So, you know, that support network is not there the way I would like. The distribution network is definitely not there. And then also, again, aesthetically, I think that the SVSs look way better than at least the Rhythmic subs I've seen. And they're still pretty comparable. You know, the SB16 output is pretty comparable to their sealed 18-inch subwoofer. So, I mean, again, their performance is great, and again, the sound quality I've heard is really, really great, if not better. But just saying, you know, you're still in that ballpark. But another great company to consider, about the same price, get in some cases better performance with the Rhythmic subs. So yeah, those are great competitors. Other than that, honestly, I think, you know, again, a lot of like the speaker boutique companies, they build still subs, but they're charging. I mean, B&W and Focal and those kind of companies, Martin Logan, their still subs are, to get this level of performance, again, you're talking 2 to 3 times the price easily. Most of them, in a lot of cases, they may be $5,000, and they're still not even really close to the performance you can get out of here. So the SVS value is there. So all of my research, you know, it's a lot of information I was compiling, and, you know, people that know me know I'm an engineer, you know, etc. So I compiled all of the data, the actual performance data, into a spreadsheet, so I can actually see and visualize, you know, how these subwoofers ranked. And I even went and extrapolated out the performance of getting dual SB16s, because I couldn't find any actual data on dual SB16 performance. So here it is. And this is actually really cool. I actually shared this on AVS Forum, which I'm a member of, have been a member of for over a decade. And people really liked it and thought it was cool. So what you see here for the most part is from left to right, you see the SB16, SB16 Dual, SB13, which was my previous sub, and then the PB 16 Ultra in different modes. So remember, the PB has a ported mode and it has a tuning frequency that you can kind of customize. So the default is 20 hertz, then it's a sealed mode. And then I went to the PB13, which is the smaller version of that. And then the PB4000, which is the new version of the PB13. So that's all SVS. And then you see I added Rhythmic. So Rhythmic SV25 is their highest performance sealed sub. Actually, one of their high performance ported subs. And then you see the F18 is their highest, their biggest sealed sub. And then FB18 is the ported version with different tuning frequencies. And then SU, the ULS, that's their sealed 15-inch competitor I mentioned. And then Paradigm, which is one of my speaker company. I love them. They make some pretty nice subs. Again, much higher price to get similar performance. The Signature Sub 2 is a $10,000 subwoofer. At least it was when it first came out, just to give you an idea. And you see the numbers there. And then the 2000 SW is kind of more of their mid-range sub. Kind of more comparable in size and stature to the SB16, but again, it's still like double the price, right? And then finally, JL Audio, I mentioned, great company. So their F113 is always a huge, great performer, much higher kind of pound for pound. They punch above their weight, but again, it's a $4,500 sub for one. And the E112 is their lower end model. It's kind of their mid-range model, closer in price to the SB16. But as you can see, the SB16 actually beats it in performance. So that's the lineup, just to get an idea. And then I kind of compiled on the bottom there to kind of group the frequencies from the ultra low end, 20 to 40 hertz, 50 to 80 hertz is kind of like that's the sweet spot of most bass, that you actually will hear. And then I kind of did a wider range of 31 to 80, which is kind of more the range of where the sealed subs will thrive. And then a total overall average. So you can quickly look and see that the SB16 Ultras, overall the total average is almost 110 decibels. And theoretically, and this is pretty conservative depending on the setup, but you can expect to get anywhere from 3 to 6 extra dB from going dual subs. So I kind of put this in the middle, as you see, and did like a 4 dB. And there was some reason for that, but so the dual should get me about 113. If you look at the chart, you look at the PB16 with the ported mode is 115, which is again quite an overall, right? And if you look at the chart, you see like again the ultra low is 113 for dual SBs versus 117 for the PB, for example. And, so again, it's a pretty big difference. Like I said, the PB with the ports are definitely going to be better at the ultra low. But after that, you can even see the 31 to 80, that general like subwoofer range for the most part, that most bass is going to come out of. You're at 117 with the dual SBs. And the reason why it's less of a difference, if you notice, is 115 with just a single, because the real advantages of dual, you really hear that only in the ultra low end. So there is an advantage, but it kind of dissipates as you go up in frequency. So that's why the difference isn't quite as large. But if you look at that, roughly 117, you're pretty close to like a PB16 in that wide 31 to 80 range, right? 117 and 118 and a half. Probably not very noticeable in terms of overall sound. So that's one takeaway. And then that's the 16 Ultra. You look at like the 13 Ultra, dual 16s in that range, that 31 to 80 range, as you see, is 116 and a half. So you're pretty comparable to a PB13 Ultra overall in that range. And Rhythmic 18-inch sealed is comparable. As you see, the single SB16 is actually comparable to it. But the dual SB16 beats it across the board. And it's comparable to their FV18, right? The highest performance seal sub we have here is that Paradigm Signature Sub 2. That's $10,000. And if you look at that range, the ultra low is actually the SB16s beat it. right? The duals, right? Beats it. But yeah, Paradigm has ridiculous output in the like kind of mid to upper bass range. So it's a 121.9. You see that number? I mean, that's insane. That's actually almost the highest number on this chart, right? It's definitely for a sealed sub. But again, it's $10,000, right? I mean, we're talking like, like 5 times the price almost. So yeah, I mean, and then the JL audio, again, great. That's kind of like one of the model subs, the F113. Overall, the SB16 total average is almost exactly on. It's exactly comparable to it. It actually is pretty comparable, if not beating it, as you see, across the entire range. So that's the story here, is that the SB16 Ultra is pretty much equal in performance to an F113 for less than half the price, right? To my point, right? And then the dual sub situation obviously will beat a single, JL F113. And then of course the E112 is even lower end than that. So it goes down beneath that. So again, you kind of just look here, and the story is the SB16 competes very, very well with some of these high-end competitors. And then looking at it compared to the ported subs, by SVS and then some of the other competitions, is really comparable, right? I mean, it's not two SB16s is not too far off than a PB16 Ultra, except for in their ultra low end, but it's definitely comparable to a PB13 Ultra or a PB4000, as you see there, even with the ported setup. So that's the story, and I mean, again, the bang for the buck, the value, aesthetics, the form factor. I felt like this was the best look for me. So that's my synopsis of it. I mean, I dug into this stuff. I tried to convince myself to, look elsewhere, to find it someplace else. I haven't tried these out yet. I'm not saying that these are the best subs in the world or anything like that. But for me, multi-purpose, multifunctional system across music, gaming, movies, and everything. The size space that I have. Aesthetically, what I was looking for in terms of size of sub and the look of the sub, for me, and what I valued and what I wanted, I think this is my end game. I think these will work out, especially 2 of these, will work out great, get the much more even distributed bass, super, super powerful for movies and anything I can throw at it. So SVS SB16s, hopefully my end game, if I ever need a sub again, it would be a long way from now, or just because I have moved or something and I need something to fit a different space. But performance wise and aesthetically, I think these will be it. So again, thanks to everyone that helped contribute to this, and thanks for the guys at SVS. I've talked to them in person, met them at different venues like the CES and stuff like that. They've been really helpful. Appreciate y'all. Like, subscribe. I'll try to get more videos out. Thank you guys. See you later.